Hello traders and investors, welcome back to the Trend Trader channel. In today's video, we are talking SAB Zenzele Kabili. Before we start, I would like to ask those who haven't subscribed to please consider subscribing. And if you find value in this video, please make sure that you smash the like button. There are a lot of things that I would like to address with regards to SAB Zenzele Kabili. But the very first question that I would like to touch on is whether SAB Zenzele Kabili is a scam. Well, the short answer, no. SAB Zenzele Kabili is not a scam. And I will share with you why SAB Zenzele Kabili is not a scam. So for those people that feel like SAB Zenzele Kabili is a scam, it is not a scam. But I'm not here to defend SAB Zenzele Kabili. Rather, I'm here to share with you how did SAB Zenzele Kabili came about. So in order for us to do that, I just have some notes that I will keep on checking a bit, because trying to find information, it was a lot of information. I hope that some of you have already done that. So the story of SAB Zenzele Kabili, it goes back to 2010. Around 2010, there was a company called SAB Miller. The people that are senior, they know that SAB Miller was selling alcohol in South Africa. It was, at that time, it was a South African company. It was a South African breweries. So, with everything trying to level the economic field economic transformation, then SAB Miller embarked on a BE transaction. The goal of the BE transaction was to ensure that employees of SAB Miller, they benefit from the prospect or the success of the business, and also the people that sell alcohol or SAB Miller product, because they also have soft drinks. So it could be people that operate restaurants, or any business that distribute SAB Miller product. So that was around 2010, and that was the plan, that those people, they will own a certain proportion. But in order for those people to own the proportion of SAB Miller, they wanted a special vehicle like that they will use for this specific BE transaction. So there was SAB Zenzele. There you had about just below 4% shares. It's a combination of shares, different things. There's for people that are external, not the SAB Miller employees, and also for SAB Miller employees. And then there's around 1.5% or so that was in another special vehicle. Combined, they made less than 10% of the SAB Miller shares. So again, remember, this is all done for economic transaction or transformation under BE share scheme. So at that time in 2010, people that participated in the initial SAB Miller, SAB Zenzele BE share scheme, they could buy those shares and hold them for 10 years. At that time, the prospectus indicated that those shareholders will be shareholders of these shares at least for 10 years. Remember, we are going back from 2010, so 10 years was supposed to end in year 2020, right? So now, at that time, the people that participated in that BE scheme, they couldn't sell their shares. Those shares were not held in the open market, meaning that you couldn't log in into your stockbroker account and then buy and sell the SAB shares. Once you buy them, you were logged in for 10 years. So now SAB Miller is listed in the GSE, the share price performs otherwise, the business itself, it performs otherwise. So if SAB Miller pays a dividend, the dividend goes to SAB Zenzele. There are a lot of things that were done. Remember, some of these shares are sold or at a discount, so they need to be interest payment. If you have seen other BE schemes, you will know that usually those BE shares are sold at a discount, but that discount, it needs to be covered somehow. So usually the business, in this case, will say SAB Mill, will lend money to the people that wants to buy these BE shares. So when those people receive dividends, then they need to repay back that loan. I'm not saying that this is what happened with SAB Zenzele, but this is common with most of the BE transactions. So just before the end of 2020, there comes AB InBev. Now AB InBev wants to buy SAB Miller, meaning that if the transaction is successful, then SAB Miller will no longer exist. But what about the people that are holding the SAB Miller shares through SAB Zenzele? And also, what about the future of economic transformation within that sector or in South Africa in general? So now remember, we have the South African Competition Commission, just those guys that are there to ensure that mergers and acquisition, they play in a sort of a fair manner. One of the requirements for that transaction to pass was that if AB InBev does succeed in buying SAB Mill, they need to continue with these BE transactions. So it's a lot of things in there, but in a nutshell, AB InBev did buy SAB Mill and they had to continue with this BE transaction. Then 2020 came, so the 10-year lock period for the initial owners of the SAB Zenzele, it was now finished. Now these people, they can do whatever they want with their shares. They can sell back the shares to SAB Miller. Unfortunately, SAB Miller no longer exists, but it's now AB InBev. They can sell the shares, they can convert them the shares back to SAB Miller. And this is one of the reasons why people, especially with all the media that was happening around the SAB Zenzele Kabili, why people were saying that if you had invested 100 Rand in SAB Zenzele in 2010, you would have received 72,000 at the end of 2020 or somewhere around 2020. That's because people couldn't sell. You see, they were locked in, the dividends were coming, the interest or the debt was being repaid. I guess the dividends were being reinvested if they were being reinvested, but people got nothing out of that. Well, they didn't get nothing. They ended up with 72,000 for an investment of 100 Rand. Well, that's the claim that is there, right? So now, as we're approaching 2020, now AB InBev, because now in theory SAB Miller no longer exists, AB InBev had to come up with a plan to continue with the PE scheme and the economic transformation of the business, right? So now they embarked on a couple of plans. Number one, the first plan is to go back to the existing SAB Zenzele shareholders to convert or to ask them or to offer them to convert their SAB Zenzele shares for SAB Zenzele Kabili. Remember, not everyone participated in the first scheme. Now we've got media coming up with the news that if you have invested this much, this is how much you would have made. So now there are more people that are interested. Also, the quality of life of black people or people that are classified as blacks under the BE Act, their life has improved substantially. So now a lot of people can now afford to invest. Remember, if you are using easy equities, you will know that a lot of young people are interested in investing. So that is what I mean. I'm not saying that the economy of the country is doing great and that people are doing great. Okay. So now the initial shareholders had the opportunity to convert their existing SAB Zenzele shares to SAB Zenzele Kabili. So they came up with a prospectus. The prospectus, the link to it, it's in the description. You will see that we'll keep on posting some of the things or extract from that prospectus. So the first people that had a chance to buy SAB Zenzele Kabili were the existing SAB Zenzele shareholders. Okay, now there's a certain price that they were going to have, and also there was a certain number of shares that they could just take easily. Remember, they are offered these shares, but not for nothing. You already have shares of SAB Zenzele, and now you're going to convert them to SAB Zenzele Kabili at a proportional value. So if you are holding 100,000 worth of SAB Zenzele shares, you are just going to get back 100,000 of SAB Zenzele Kabili. So it's not like you're just gonna make a lot of money out of that. So people could buy as many shares as they wish, up to 5,000. If you wanted to convert to SAB Zenzele shares up to 5,000, easy peasy, that was going to happen. But if you want more than 5,000 shares, then I think they wanted to first ensure that everybody, the existing shareholders, they can convert easily. Then if there are some shares that are remaining, then the people that want more than 5,000 shares, they can then participate in that, right? But now there's also another difference. Initially, all the SAB Zenzele shareholders were sort of going to get SAB Zenzele Kabili. I hope that all of them or most of them, they converted their shares to SAB Zenzele Kabili. But now, to ensure that even the people that didn't participate in the SAB Zenzele, the initial BE scheme, are accommodated. Now, this was also open to the public. By public, I mean people that are classified as blacks according to the BE Act. I won't go to the details of that. If you have a problem with that, you need to take it up with the government. But everybody that is classified as blacks under the BE Act then was able to participate now, right? So the first people are the previous shareholders. After the previous shareholders have taken all the SAB Zenzele Kabili shares that they wanted, then now the public that is classified as black was going to be able to participate. So they were going to sell shares to everybody that is black. Now, here's the catch. The shares were going to trade. Remember, the shares were listed on Wednesday. It was April 2020. I don't remember the actual date, but I think it was the 19th of April. The listing price, we can just say it's an IPO, even though it's not an IPO. The listing price of the SAB Zenzele Kabili shares was 40 Rand per share. So when the market opens, they were supposed to trade at 40 Rand per share, right? Everything is good. You still with me. The prospectus was there. The people that wanted to invest in these shares, they should have read the prospectus so that they understand what is going on. Okay, but now since the shares are available on the market, in the open market, we only work with two rules: supply and demand. There's no any other manga business. If there is no supply, or if there's too much demand with limited supply, then the share price definitely is going to go up. So the first thing that you need to understand is that the listing price was 40 Rand per share. That's the price that you were going to pay if there wasn't a lot of demand for the SAB Zenzele Kabili shares. Okay. Number two, in the prospectus, the company, they did estimate the net asset value of the SAB Zenzele Kabili. The net asset value was estimated to be 60 Rand per share after listing. Before listing, SAB Zenzele Kabili shares did not exist. They didn't have any value. Post-listing, they were going to have a value, a net asset value of 60 Rand per share. Now, they calculated this net asset value using the previous result of AB InBev. Remember, SAB Zenzele or SAB Zenzele Kabili does not do business. It's either it's SAB Miller or AB InBev that does business. So these companies, SAB Zenzele Kabili, the shares, not the company, because it's not a company, it's a BE scheme, it does no business. So the net asset value is calculated based on the performance of AB InBev, also taking into consideration that there is a discount because they want to ensure that the shareholders of SAB Zenzele Kabili are able to purchase the shares through the BE scheme and then own AB InBev, because again, it is no longer SAB Miller, right? So the listing price was 40 Rand per share. The net asset value post listing was gonna be 60 Rand. Okay, again, now you go back to that. Now the shares are trading at the open market. People, the previous shareholders, if they wanted to, they could have sold their shares to anybody that fits the black criteria according to the BE Act. Yes, that is going to be a thing, because we need to understand that when we say blacks, we're not talking just about native black South Africans. We're talking Indians, coloreds, and Asians are also included as black according to the BE Act, right? So now, what you should have done as an investor before you say that you were scammed, it is important that you should have done something to measure what is the fair price or try to evaluate these SAB Zenzele Kabili shares. But remember, it's not a business. It has no history. It has no asset. It is only something that has a relationship with AB InBev. So they already done the job for you. They tell you that, okay, the share price is going to be offered at 40 Rand per share. But after listing, it's going to be 60 Rand, the value of each share. So now you see, if you bought the shares at 40 Rand, you're going to get a 20 Rand discount because the net asset value is 60 Rand. It's a 20 Rand more compared to the listing price. That is issue number one. Issue number two, how many of these BE shares? They are of a limited supply compared to the ordinary shares. Even the ordinary shares have a limited supply, but it is a minor value because it was 40,550,000 shares of SAB Zenzele Kabili that people can buy in the open market. But now the number, it does get a bit iffy because they talk about 50 million of ordinary shares and then they talk about 1 million of SAB Zenzele Kabili preference shares. But we are talking in the context of retail investors. Most of the time when we invest in shares, we invest in ordinary shares. I know there are some people that invest in preference shares, but majority of retail investors, we invest through ordinary shares. So the number that we're going to stick with is the 40,550,000 SAB Zenzele Kabili shares that are out there in the open market. That includes some of the shares that are already in the hands of the previous SAB Zenzele shareholders and some of the shares that are now floating in the market that anybody that fits the black criteria can buy. Now, a lot of people had interest in this for so many reasons. It could be because the previous guys, they invested 100 rand, they made 72,000. Or it's because you think that Ab InBev as a business, it has a decent future. So you are speculating on the future of the business. Whatever the reason why you want to own SAB Zenzele Kabili, it means that now you can go to the open market, buy these shares, bid for these shares. On the day when they started selling, immediately when the market opened, the share price was already above 45 rand per share. And then it traded, I think on that day, it did reach 60 rand per share or so. But the share price of SAB Zenzele Kabili went up rapidly, so quick. By midday, the price was already flying. So now this is where the problem started. Remember, at that time, we made a video that how people can buy these shares. So, I'm trying. Computer share was one of the channels that you could use to buy these shares, and it was a long process to register with a computer share for that BE verification, for you to create the brokerage account, deposit money, and everything. Computer share, they just said they were receiving a high volume of emails and calls. So it was a problem. It was not easy to set up a BE account if you didn't have an existing BE account. It was just a mission. A majority of young retail investors, they use easy equities. At that time, easy equities couldn't give people an opportunity to buy a BE shares. I mean, easy equities at the beginning of the business, they had their own business plan, what they wanted to do. Now there's this product that people want. Now is equities has to make the means for that product to be available. So I'm not in any way faulting is equities. They just didn't have, let's say, the authorization to issue or to be able to allow investors to buy and sell the SAB Zenzele Kabili shares. So the first 2 weeks was just a mess from an investor's perspective because you could try to open an account with computer share. Easy Equities was working to try to get that authorization. I don't know who else was able to sell because remember, some people, they use their stockbrokers, their banks and other financial institutions. So by the time majority of retail investors could buy SAB Zenzele Kabili shares, now the share price was beyond 100 rand per share. Now, remember, there's fear of missing out. Or sometimes it's not just a fear of missing out, it's because you really want the product. Then some investors, they stopped thinking about how much exactly each share should be. Were they overpaying for the share? Majority of the people, it seems like they just stopped thinking about the valuation. They just wanted to buy these shares and be SAB Zenzele Kabili shareholders. So some investors, they overpaid for the shares. But did they really overpay? Well, that's for you to judge depending on where you bought. The reason why I'm saying that, people before SAB Zenzele Kabili, we know there was Thungela Resources. The IPO came at 25 rand per share. Then the share price, it just kept on going up, reaching as high as 340 rand per share. So now, if you see a rapid share price movement, what if SAB Zenzele Kabili was going to pull another Thungela Resources move? Difficult to judge. Unfortunately, a lot of people, they didn't do valuation. Some people, they suffered from the fear of moving out, but also nobody could predict the future, what was going to happen. Unfortunately, after a couple of trading weeks or months, then the dust settled. Now people could open account with computer share. The shares were available on its equities and other financial institutions that are authorized to issue or to sell or to make these PE shares to be available to investors. Now it was a question of demand and supply. People have already bought the shares. Some people have already doubled their money. If there are people that have doubled their money, some people wanted to sell and lock in their gains. Remember, unlike the first PE scheme, this PE scheme you can buy and sell whenever the market is open. As long as the shares are available, you can buy them. If you want to sell them, as long as there is a willing buyer elsewhere, then you can sell the shares at whatever price the bid and the ask. Because when you don't set the price that you want, the price is determined by the market. So it's unfortunate that some people bought, let's say, above 100 rand, which was double the listing price, or above 120, which was double the net asset value. If people don't evaluate companies, I'm not saying that it was a bubble, but when the share price moves up rapidly, we tend to forget about valuations. We just buy because we're hoping that whatever it is that we're buying is going to continue to go up. And I think that's what some people did with SAB Zenzele Kabili. There were some people who tried to give information about the net asset value, the valuation, all those kinds of things. But I guess the shares were selling like hotcakes, and some people, unfortunately, they got bent. The people that bought above 170 rand per share, because now the share price has fallen back to just a low 40s. At some point, it was a 41 rand per share. So now, today, look at the share price of SAB Zenzele Kabili. Try to try to come up with the fair value. But now the problem is that it's not a business. It is through AB InBev. Try to look at the AB InBev performance. How is AB InBev performing? If you see that AB InBev has a future and you can estimate the fair value of AB InBev, I think AB InBev was trading somewhere around 1,100, 1,200 per share. Look at the fair value. Do you see a discount? If you see a discount, obviously, if you buy the BE shares, you're even getting a bigger discount compared to that of AB InBev. And if you are an investor and if you happen to be a value investor or a fan of Warren Buffett, then you should know that every time you buy an asset, you should buy the asset when it is undervalued, when there's discount or margin of safety. You don't just buy an asset if it's overpriced, because how long it's going to take the price to correct until the fair price is reflected in the share price of the security. So now what you can do, you can look at AB InBev, you can look at the current price of SAB Zenzele Kabili, try to make sense of the numbers. And if you feel like we are buying the share at the fair price, or if it's undervalued, or even if it's selling at a premium and you don't mind paying a lot of a premium, then you can buy the shares. One thing that some people made is that when they were buying these shares, they will say investing is a long-term game. I mean, these shares, they only came live recently. That is when they started trading. So now it is not even 5 years. Why are you worried? Because you always say that investing is a long-term game, a long-term game. So is it 5 years? Should you really be worried? I'm not saying that you shouldn't be worried. At the end of the day, it's you who own these shares. It's you who understand how you feel about this whole situation. But every time when you take a position, whether it's a trading position or it's an investing position, you need to always have a plan for that particular position. Okay, so if you said that it's your 5 or 10 year plan, it's not 5 years yet. A lot can still happen. The share price can still go up. Worst case scenario, the share price can still go down. If it's at 10 years, you still have a couple of time. Now, in our YouTube channel, we always trading, always use a stop loss. We always cut our losses. If I had SAB Zenzele Kabili shares, I guess at some point I would have cut loss, because when I was buying them, I would have set a stop loss. I don't have SAB Zenzele Kabili shares, but I do have AB InBev shares. Any BE scheme that is happening in the country, I support it. We understand why we need economic transformation. if anything gives people an opportunity to participate in the economy, I think it's a good thing. I will never have a problem with BE transaction, but it is important that you read the prospectus, you understand what the company is trying to do, everything that is associated with that BE scheme. It could be MTN, Zakhele, Sasol, Yebo Yethu, if it's called Yebo Yethu, multi-choice, all the existing BE schemes. It is important to ensure that you understand what is the goal of that and how the whole scheme is going to be handled, and try to do some valuation. If you can't do valuation, try to follow people who understand valuation. Obviously, everybody has an opinion, and opinions have a tendency to be incorrect. So some of the evaluators might be incorrect. That is why some people, they look at the general agreement of the people that are giving an opinion. So try to listen to more than one person who's giving an opinion of what the price should be, and then try not to overpay, especially if you overpay 2 times, 3 times, then yeah, it becomes really tough. It does not make a business sense. We know that in year 2022, I think around September or so, SAB Zenzele Kabili did pay dividend. Remember, the money is coming from AB InBev. It is passed on SAB Zenzele Kabili, then it is passed to you as a shareholder of SAB Zenzele Kabili. So last year, we know that SAB Zenzele Kabili did pay dividend. Now in 2023, we are in April now. I'm not sure if they're gonna declare or if they have already declared a dividend. So for the people that bought, let's say below 100 rand, maybe at some point they will easily get back the money that they have invested in the form of dividends. But for the people that paid above 180, it will really take some time before those people recover their money, because if the share price is 40 rand, it needs to go up at least by 4 times before it reaches 108 rand. And then we look at the dividend, how much dividend are they paying, how many years it will take for those people to make up their money through dividend payment. There's nothing that says it can't happen quickly, that the share price move from 40 rand back to 1.8, but it will also depend on the demand. How are the people feeling about the scheme at this moment? Basically, what is the morale of the investors with regards to SAB Zenzele Kabili? Maybe we need another hype. Maybe SAB Zenzele Kabili or AB InBev need to go back and teach people about how to go about investing, the things that you should consider, such as valuation and controlling your emotions. But in terms of AB InBev, we are happy with the position that we have. When we gave the March update for the 10,000 Rand stock trading challenge, we shared the chart of AB InBev. We mentioned why we are buying AB InBev. Basically, it broke above resistance level, and there is a price of about 1,500 that AB InBev can potentially reach. We're not saying that it is going to go and reach 1.5, 1.8. If it does, great, we're going to make money. If it doesn't, then we have a stop loss to manage that position. So once again, SAB Zenzele Kabili was not a scam. A lot of things happened so quick. Some people, they forgot to do valuations. There were some issues with creating those BE verified accounts so that people can buy those things. By the time the accounts were verified, people still wanted to buy the shares, but the share price had already shot through the roof. So to an extent that some people, they ended up overpaying for the shares. We hope that with the next IPOs that will come from any company, or BE scheme that will come from any company, people are not going to repeat the same mistake, because if you as a person, you repeat the same mistakes, then it becomes a habit. It means that you have a bad habit, or you have a habit of making bad investment decisions, and then it becomes your fault, really. It's not the fault of the market, SAB Zenzele Kabili, or the BE scheme. Then it starts to become your fault. So we hope that you didn't, well, some people, they believe that you only lose when you sell. So for the people that are sitting in red, we hope that you are not deep in red. You didn't buy too far from 100 Rand per share. How long it will take the share price to rise? If it rises, we don't know. We're not going to predict anything, but we just hope that it will grow at some point. We don't have the shares, so at this moment, we don't have vested interest. If the share price starts to perform in a way that excite us based on technical analysis, we might or we might not take a position, but that is something that will happen in future. So that's it for today. If you found value in this video, please make sure that you smash the like button. If there's anything that you would like to share with regards to SAB Zenzele Kabili or any other PE investment that you have made in the past, if there are some things that you would like to share that you think that can help other fellow investors, please feel free to share it in the comment section. We will see you in the next video.